The night over Donbass looks quiet, until you realise the stars are moving. They are not stars at all, but tiny engines with big teeth, whispering across the tree line, hunting for heat, metal, and mistakes. Somewhere below, a Russian column thinks it has time to breathe. It doesn't. In seconds, a mosaic of first-person view cameras, relay birds, and loitering wings will fuse into a single, ruthless decision. Strike, then vanish. War used to belong to the biggest guns. Now it belongs to whoever can see furthest, think fastest, and burn less money per explosion. At the center of this shift sits a Ukrainian unit that has learned to turn hobby tech and battlefield chaos into a playbook. The 12th Special Forces Brigade, Azov, of the National Guard. Their unmanned systems battalion has rewritten the terms of contact: how you scout, how you strike, how you keep your people alive. It's not just clever, it's industrial-grade ingenuity. If strategy were a hackathon, Azov would be the team pushing code to production at 3 AM, then patching it again by dawn. Azov's legend began in the sieges, but its reinvention is happening in the drone age. Last year, Azov formalized what many Ukrainian units were improvising: a dedicated unmanned systems battalion with several hundred troops and literally tens of thousands of drones. From nimble FPV killers to heavy bomber multicopters. Its commander, call sign Yas, describes a unit engineered to put machines between Russian fires and Ukrainian infantry, and to fight in and around the pulverized urban terrain of Toretsk, where inches of ground cost lives. The mission sounds simple, but it is doctrinally radical. Build a 2-kilometer buffer zone of machines between your riflemen and the enemy, so flesh rarely has to walk into steel. That means Azov's drones don't just blow things up. They jam, blind, scout, burn logistics, and strip away the enemy's communications until a larger assault can't even start. It's a strategy of denial, death by 1,000 precise cuts. The genius inside the tactics. First, the sensor web. Azov saturates the air with recon quads, cheap, plentiful, and always replaced. They hunt for antennas, repeaters, ammo caches, and those telltale motorcycle rushes that both sides now favor for speed. When Russia shifts tactics, infiltration in small groups rather than meat grinder waves, Azov shifts the lens. More micro recon, more attention on trails and culverts, more eyes pointed where Doctrine says nothing will be there. The unit's operators talk about spending most of their time locating targets rather than killing them, because every missile wasted is a gap in the shield protecting the infantry behind them. Second, the shot. When the picture is clear, FPVs go to work. The trick isn't the impact, it's the path. Russian electronic warfare throws static across the air, so Azov runs layered control. Classic RF links, mesh relays on mother drones that carry FPVs further forward, and cable-tethered birds that fly in total radio silence. Fiber-optic FPVs are basically guided spears, immune to jamming, invisible to passive RF sensors, but finicky and demanding to fly. Azov's Yaz puts it bluntly: they work, they're fragile, and only a small slice of sorties use them, less than 5%, but when they're needed, nothing else cuts through EW like a glass knife. The mother drone concept is just as clever. A larger UAV hauls several FPVs, acts as a high repeater, and releases the killers when the geometry is right. It's a way to leapfrog radio horizons and tree lines without hauling trucks of mast antennas into artillery range. The unit experiments with its own carriers rather than paying for unproven black box gadgets, because battlefield tech is only real once it wins a fight. Third, the night. Darkness used to be a friend to the infiltrator. Now it's the drone pilot's favorite time. With thermal optics slung under small airframes, Azov's teams prowl after dusk, when engines and bodies bloom as white flowers against the cold ground. Their pilots learn to read thermal behavior: a truck that's been idling, a foxhole that just warmed, a generator that shouldn't be there, and then steer munitions onto thin roof armor, turret rings, or the backs of parked vehicles. It's slow, patient violence, but it's the kind that saves platoons. Fourth, the discipline. The battalion refuses Hollywood waves of 10 to 20 drones just because they look dramatic. Mass can work for deep strike or propaganda, but at the tactical line, it can also waste hard-to-replace airframes and make your signal's footprint too loud to hide. Azov's preference is measured pressure. Pick the comms repeater, the ammo truck, the lead motorcycle, the exact tree line the assault needs, and collapse the enemy's plan in 2 or 3 surgical minutes instead of one noisy barrage. When incendiary Dragon drones, thermite droppers, became trendy online, Azov tried them, then said the quiet part out loud. Most incendiaries burn out before reaching the ground. At best, they deliver a psychological effect. At worst, they waste sorties. The unit kept a few for edge cases and went back to what works: precision on critical nodes. This capacity to test, discard, and iterate is the secret spice in the recipe. In early 2025, Azov unveiled a homegrown strike aircraft called Seth, a compact, Shahed-shaped loitering munition with an electric motor, automated targeting, and a tactical job description. Punch 30 to 40 miles into the enemy's rear, quietly, to hit trucks, guns, and command posts that smaller FPVs can't reach. The first batches went straight to Azov, thanks to Ukraine's Come Back Alive Foundation, and footage of Seth at work near Toretsk followed fast. The point wasn't to mimic Russia's 2,000-kilometer Goran strikes. It was to mass-produce a smart, short-range scalpel for the brigade-level fight. Seth's quiet is power. An electric motor means low thermal and acoustic signature, and the delta wing means stability and payload for a single decisive hit. About 3 to 5 kilograms on target, according to early reporting. That's enough to tear open a radar van or gut a logistics truck, which is exactly the kind of attrition that starves assaults. Automated targeting takes load off pilots and helps in the last seconds, when jamming or terrain tries to steal control. And because it is Ukrainian built, Seth can be tuned to the front line's actual needs in weeks, not quarters. That is what battlefield software looks like when it comes with a warhead. Map the steps and you see why this strategy terrifies traditional staffs. A patrol buzzes a trench and tags 3 radios and a dirt track. A mother drone climbs to relay height, and the FPV team pre-programs every turn down to fence posts. A Seth crew watches a feed from a recon quad hovering 10 kilometers deeper, waiting for the resupply gas truck that always shows up 20 minutes after the first shots. Command posts learned to go dark. Azov learned to memorize dark. The moment the truck arrives, an FPV dismembers the lead bike of the escort. A second FPV cuts the repeater, and Seth comes in low and cold on the truck. None of this costs more than a few $1,000s per kill. None of it gives Russian artillery a clean return shot. 2 minutes later, the sky is empty again, and the infantry 2 kilometers back never had to leave their berm. Now multiply that by dozens of micro actions per day, and you have the operational effect: momentum theft. Russia needs pace to advance. Azov's drones steal time by wrecking the little rhythms, fuel, radios, bridging kits that sustain pace. This isn't just cheap technology, it's doctrinal geometry. Trade cheap silicon for the enemy's expensive opportunity. Innovation is nothing without structure, and Ukraine took the hint. In 2024, President Zelensky ordered the creation of a separate unmanned systems forces branch, world first in scope, to standardize training, codify tactics, and integrate land, air, and maritime robotics. The government formalized leadership, named a commander, and began turning lessons from units like Azov into doctrine and programs of record. That isn't a gadget, that's a national factory for battlefield ideas. Results: across 2024 to 2025, independent analysis found that drones accounted for an unprecedented share of Russian losses. A landmark study highlighted that roughly 2/3 of destroyed Russian targets were taken out by tactical drones. Not artillery, not missiles, not tanks, confirming the shift Azov helped pioneer from improvisation to dominance. When the cheapest weapons do most of the killing, the war's economics tilt. If you want a field test of this doctrine's value, look at the places that were supposed to fall and didn't. In the late summer and fall pushes, as towns like New York and the Toretsk axis buckled under pressure, Azov moved in and stabilized catastrophic sectors by pouring unmanned systems and trained pilots into the fight. It wasn't magic, it was tempo. Faster find, faster strike, faster rearm. The unit's culture, young commanders, ruthless learning, no fear of scrapping a bad idea, turned into concrete mileage on the map. Even the hero shot kills serve a purpose. Azov's pilots have clipped TOS thermobaric systems, command trucks, and tanks not just because it looks good, but because each one is a silent veto against the next assault. Every high-value destruction buys a day for sappers to lay mines, for gunners to reposition, for civilians to evacuate. The video might trend. The real win is the enemy operation that never leaves the planning board.
Russia fights back. It builds decoy nets, digs anti-FPV tunnels, throws up more smoke, pushes motorcycle and ATV swarms, and evolves EW every month. Azov's answer is to change the questions. If jamming thickens, fiber-optic sorties cut through. If thermal masks get better, pilots change angles and time over target, or shift to cutting the logistics vein instead of striking the armoured heart. If motorised rushes spike, drones stalk the roads before dawn, when engines must warm and give themselves away. The doctrine is elastic by design. Don't fixate on their thing. Find the next vulnerable habit and punish it. And restraint is part of the toolkit. You will not see Azov torching every tree line with thermite just because it looks scary. Their own commander said it straight. Dragon drones are mostly psychology. The incendiary payload burns out before it matters. When everybody else tries to look terrifying online, genius looks like saying no to the wrong fire.
It's hard to overstate the economics. An artillery shell is thousands of dollars, whether it hits or not. A smart FPV is hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand, only when it hits. If your drone crashes, you lost a little. If your enemy parks a $3 million vehicle one tree line too close, he loses a lot. Add machine vision assists, stabilized gimbals, and software that turns shaky hands into steady hits, and you've built a precision strike complex out of parts the global market already manufactures by the millions. That is why Azov flies tens of thousands of airframes. Volume is a weapon. Seth again is the emblem. Not a strategic wonder weapon, but a tactical loiterer you can feed into the battlefield in numbers. A format that accepts rapid upgrades. An electric engine that lets it arrive before defenders even realize something is coming. A good enough autonomous brain that can finish the shot when human control gets fuzzy. It's not perfect, no weapon is, but it is exactly the kind of thing you build when the problem is, how do we break the next resupply in time, rather than how do we impress at a trade show. Machines don't win alone. Azov's training pipeline starts recruits on counter-drone defense from day one, and turns pilots into mission designers, logisticians, and EW tacticians. The best FPV operators can read turbulence and foliage swirls like infantry read footprints. Teams learn to hand off control in mid-flight, swap frequencies blindfolded, and fly by latency and instinct when a repeater starts to die. It is closer to orchestral performance than it is to any single pilot's art, and it lives or dies on rehearsal. That's why a dedicated battalion matters. The repetitions never stop. And the culture matters even more. When the commander of a frontline unmanned unit publicly says which trendy systems aren't worth it, he's sending a signal to the entire Ukrainian ecosystem. Experiment hard, kill your darlings fast, and spend on what wins. That honesty is rare in wartime. It's also why Ukrainian drone warfare keeps jumping a generation every few months. Azov's War of Robots language is not hype. It's a pragmatic way to save humans. Every drone killed is a human not sent into a trench at noon. Every buffer zone hour burned by a UAV is an hour your riflemen can reinforce, your gunners can displace, your medics can reach a casualty. That is why the unit insists its primary task is to keep infantry out of battles they don't have to fight. It is also why this strategy scales. The more brigades operating like this, the fewer bodies the war consumes. This genius isn't unique to Azov. It's becoming Ukrainian DNA. The new unmanned systems forces are meant to collect exactly this kind of hard-won knowledge and push it across the force. Standardize courses, certify pilots, share playbooks on cable drones, mother carrier tactics, night targets, thermal signatures, and the black art of beating EW. Azov provided one of the best field labs. Kyiv is turning it into policy. Meanwhile, the numbers keep telling the same story. A huge fraction of targets Russia loses at the front are dying to cheap unmanned systems. The longer this holds, the more every tank, gun, and truck has to live further back. The more the front line becomes a valley of small machines that never sleep. The more the old who has more tubes calculus becomes irrelevant. Doctrine is catching up with reality, and reality favors the fleet of small things.
3 quick myths. Myth 1. Drones are a fad.
If 2/3 of destroyed targets are falling to unmanned systems, the fad already won. Artillery still matters, so does air. But if you can't beat cheap flyers, you can't maneuver. Myth 2. EW made drones useless. EW made bad drone plans useless. Fiber-optic control, mother drone relays, and smarter route planning just changed the chapter. Ask the units still losing radios, trucks, and repeaters every night. Myth 3. It's all about the coolest gadget. No, the coolest thing Azov did this year might be publicly saying that incendiary droppers aren't worth the hype. The second coolest was building a unit that treats iteration as a weapon. Yes, pilots sometimes rig their screens with bicycle phone mounts and electrical tape. Yes, somebody is definitely running a spreadsheet named "Please don't fly this near trees." And yes, there's a pilot who swears he can smell when a motor is about to burn out. Just don't mistake the scrappy aesthetic for amateurism. This is precision warfare on a student budget timeline.
Dead Russian per $1.
It's also the first war where a teenager's sim racing reflexes can save a platoon. Somewhere Clausewitz is raising an eyebrow. Somewhere Sun Tzu is asking for a firmware update.
If a brigade can reliably push robots 2 kilometers ahead of its infantry and render enemy assaults blind, then the enemy needs exponentially more mass to break through. A tax in steel and blood that Russia can't evade without inventing a better idea. That means Azov's approach, scaled, is an anti-breakthrough doctrine. It denies the opponent the rhythm he needs to exploit a local success. It also forces him into a paradox. Either pack EW and air defenses close to the front and accept that they'll die to cheap, numerous strikes, or keep them back and accept that your company commanders will fight deaf and dumb. There's a broader lesson for every military watching. Genius isn't a single platform, it's a feedback loop. Azov's loop, pilot lessons to workshop, to small batch, to frontline test, to doctrine, turns months into days. It's less buying drones than manufacturing advantage. And because the component pipeline is global and civilian, the innovation clock runs on consumer tech speed, not defense bureaucracy time. You don't outspend that, you out-adapt to it. The drones over Donbass aren't magic, they're a method. Azov's genius is to treat the air above the trench like an operating system. Layered processes, a clean API between sensors and shooters, and constant updates pushed live under fire. Build a buffer zone of robots. Keep your people behind it, hit what matters most, and let cost curves do the rest. That's the play, and the world is watching because the lesson is bigger than one brigade or one front. Whoever learns to see like this and to change this fast will write the next chapter of warfare. When the future arrives on humming propellers and braided fiber, do you double down on the old steel, or do you start thinking in terms of swarms, relays, and buffer zones? Ukraine, and Azov in particular, has already answered. The sky is crowded, the rules are new, the smartest army is the one that continually updates. Azov's creation of a dedicated unmanned systems battalion, its scale, several hundred troops and tens of thousands of drones, and operations around Toretsk are drawn from an in-depth interview with the unit's commander and on-the-ground reporting. The buffer zone concept, focus on striking logistics and communications, and the unit's skepticism about incendiary Dragon drones are from that same commander, describing what works and what doesn't after months of combat. Azov's layered counter-EW approach,
including fiber-optic FPVs, their benefits and their limits, is summarized from a technical interview detailing how cable-controlled drones bypass jamming, yet remain a niche tool requiring skilled pilots. Seth's delivery to Azov via Comeback Alive, its Shahed-like form factor, electric propulsion, estimated 30 to 40 mile tactical range, and automated targeting are compiled from Ukrainian outlets and frontline imagery analysis of the first combat batches near Toretsk. Ukraine's formal creation of an unmanned systems forces branch and appointment of its commander is documented in official statements and international reporting. This is the doctrinal backbone that spreads units like Azov's practices across the force. Independent analyses showing that drones now account for roughly 2/3 of destroyed Russian targets underline the strategic weight of this approach and the broader shift Azov helps to illustrate. Finally, reporting on Azov halting Russian attacks around New York captures the operational payoff when a brigade brings an obsessive drone culture to a collapsing sector. Stability, tempo, and time bought for the rest of the force.